Hi everyone, this is Nicole here for Honeybee Stamps, and I am creating this coffee themed card using a couple of the new stamp sets from the most recent release, and I am using the Perfect Blend Greetings stamp set combined with the Coffee Break stamp set. That's going to be the images. The Perfect Blend is all of these amazing greetings. I started with a stitched rectangle die cut with the A2 double stitched rectangle die. This is from some Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm going to do a little watercoloring with Zing Clean Color Real Brush markers, and I love the Bristol paper for coloring with those. I want to stamp my greetings first. What I love about so many of the Honeybee Stamps greeting stamp sets is that you can mix and match the greetings to read whatever, or say whatever you want to say, I guess is what I want to, how I want to put it. And I decided to combine greetings. The sending is a separate greeting, so is a whole, then latte and love. So those are 4 separate greetings, and then the life happens, coffee helps is all one. So I am stamping all the smaller words at once, and I'm going to stamp those with some VersaFine black ink right here along the top edge of my background. And I've left space for the word latte. This is a little bit larger word, it's scripty, and I want it to really stand out. Oftentimes if I have a large greeting like this and one of the words has a different font than the others, I like to highlight it, especially in this instance where it is a card that is talking about coffee and coffee drinking. So the latte is going to be the highlighted word of this text. I'm going to stamp latte with Versamark ink and emboss it with a colorful embossing powder. And I am a huge fan of red. I think it really pops, and it's going to look amazing when this background is all watercolored and paint splattered, and it's still going to show up really well. That's the other thing about the Honeybee Stamps greetings. They are a nice size. They don't disappear into the design of the card at all. The sentiment here is definitely the showcase, paired with the adorable coffee cups, of course, but it really stands out and is a very important part of the design. Here's this red embossing powder. I've had this forever. Go ahead and heat set this then. Now I had some little flecks in a couple little places. Before I heat set that, I like to take a little paintbrush and remove those paint flecks, or embossing powder flecks rather, so that they don't get heat set. I really like my greetings to not have any of those little flecks all over the place. Even though I used a powder tool, some of the embossing powder flakes just wanted to stick on other parts of the card. So a little paintbrush is so handy in this instance. Make sure it's dry. It'll help pick up those little embossing powder flecks and move them out of the way. So here is my greeting along the top edge of the card. I am ready to start adding some stamped coffee cups now. I'm going to use a combination of coffee cups, both the kind of iced coffee type looking cup, and then the like to-go coffee cup. There are also lots of other coffee images in this stamp set. Lots of ways to use this. There's coordinating dies. If you don't want to do masking, which is what I'm going to do here, and because this is more of a almost single layer card, this panel is going to attach to a side fold card base, and that's it. There are no other dimensional embellishments or anything, so it's going to be able to be mailed really easily. But if you want to cut down on the masking time, you could stamp these on a separate piece of paper and do this exact same technique, but just layer them over the background with those die cut images. You could watercolor the background, everything the same, you just cut out the masking. I know some people are big fans of masking and others are absolutely not. Lots of ways you can achieve a very similar look. I'm using some clear embossing powder here to emboss this. I used clear because I want the outline to be white, and the paper behind it is white. If the paper wasn't white behind it, you could always use white embossing powder instead. So I've got a little scrap of masking paper here. I'm going to stamp that image again, cut this out, and use this as a mask on my card. And I'm going to end up using it a couple times. I'm going to need a mask for each of the coffee cups I'm using, and I'm going to stamp just these two designs each twice. They're a nice big size, so they're going to fill up the whole bottom edge of this background. If you wanted to do a background that is A2 sized and not do the stitched rectangle, I think you could probably fit 5 all the way across. All along, I planned to do kind of a rainbow color type effect. I tried to do this in more neutral colors, like with browns and things in the background, before I went the colorful route, and it's not natural for me. And I realized that, and after sleeping on it, I thought, I'm going to go with what I know I like personally, and that's bright and colorful. If I can throw in rainbow colors, I generally like to try to do that. And what the final result ended up being something I really loved. So here is the mask on the first coffee cup I stamped. I tried to make sure that I kind of split the difference. I started somewhat just left of middle with stamping my coffee cups to ensure that I'd have enough room all the way across the bottom of the card. And other than the first coffee cup I stamped, they're going to be cut off in some way. And this kind of helps ground the images as well, so that they don't feel like they're just floating out there in outer space. Once I have the second cup stamped, I can remove my mask, but I'm going to need a mask for this cup as well. That's because there is a straw image that works with this, and I want some fun little straws coming out of the iced coffee cups. I'm not going to need a mask for the straws, just kind of for the top of this coffee cup, and then if I'm going to need, I might as well cut out the whole mask for this because I'm going to need it in a little bit as I move across the bottom of the card design. I think you can see those two outlines that I've already embossed a little bit. So here I'm going to pop my mask in place, grab the straw, stamp that straw, and then heat emboss this with that clear embossing powder. And I forgot to remove my stamp, so I'm going to try that one more time. I like to use a stamp positioner tool when doing masking. I feel like it gives me a lot more control over where all of the images go, and just kind of a security measure, because you can't really just remove that image if you've already stamped it on your card. I'm going to add 2 more images. I'm alternating between the iced coffee and the to-go coffee cup. And I didn't get this one very clean, so it didn't end up bothering me too badly for this card design. But if you want bright white outlines, make sure you've got your stamp good and clean before you stamp it with Versamark, because that Versamark is going to pick up any residue on that stamp. And in this case, it picked up the VersaFine, and it's going to transfer that to the paper. And if you use clear embossing powder, it's still going to show up. At this point, I did not want to redo the whole card, and I figured with all the watercoloring and things I was going to add to this, it wouldn't bother me too bad, and it really didn't in the end card. Otherwise, I might have started over at this point, but I decided not to. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set this so I can add the straw to this image as well, before I finish with my final coffee cup along the right side. And these little masks can be used over and over. In fact, if they are still in good shape, I like to stick them right inside my stamp pocket, like on the backing paper for the stamps, so that if I ever need them again, I already have a mask. Now I'm going to lay down a little bit of the Zing Clean Color Real Brush markers right over the images. and then blend them out with a water brush pen. I call this kind of cheater's watercolor. The embossed area helps hold the color in the embossed area, so it's really, really forgiving. And it blends out beautifully, so you still get that awesome watercolor look, but yet it's very, very controlled. So I'm adding just a very light blue tint to the top of the lids for the iced coffees, and then kind of that Cool Whip on top. I'm adding just a little bit of the oatmeal color and blending it out with a lot of water, so it's just barely tinted to help it show up a little bit. Adding more color to the rest of the designs on the front of the cup. Red straw here coming out of the pink iced coffee. And then real quick, I decided to lay down a little bit of color. I started with the Shadow Mauve, the same color I used for the lid of the cup, to see about adding some color to the background, because that's really going to help make the tops of those coffee cups pop. However, I didn't really like it, was too light, so I'm going to go with a light blue instead, and I'll go ahead and finish that in a little bit so you can see more of that. I colored in the next coffee cup with some oranges and yellows, a little bit of red. I've got a little bit of red in the pink cup as well. Then a blue cup with a green label and a green straw. Again, the lid had a little Shadow Mauve and a little oatmeal for the whip at the top of it. And finally, some purples for my last cup with a red band, kind of pinkish red band it ends up looking, and a pink label. So very bright and colorful, definitely has that rainbow feel. Little red heart that I stamped there at the end of the greeting. I'm going to color with some reds as well. And I lay down my color pretty messy and blend it out with that water brush pen. It gives a really nice effect. Once everything is all colored in, I am going to go ahead and scribble some of the light blue marker on an acrylic block, then pick that color up with my water brush pen and paint that all the way around the edges of the coffee cups, down there along the bottom. And I did make that red bleed from the heart a little bit, so I'm just cleaning that up. This gives a much smoother application, and I'm just kind of lightening it towards the top of the card behind the stamped and embossed greeting. Now on another acrylic block, or a cleaned off acrylic block, I just use this as a little palette, and I'm going to go ahead and put a little broken china distress paint on that, water it down with a little water, and then pick it up with a small paintbrush and flick it all over the background for an awesome distressed look. This is going to give some nice little droplets because I'm using a really small paintbrush. The more water you add, the more it's going to give a little bit more of a translucent look of drop. I don't put as much water in it. I like the color to really show through. I'm going to use some Picket Fence white next. It is not going to show up near as much. It's just going to help with the distressing a little bit. Then you want to set this aside to completely dry. I like to let it air dry. Once it's done air drying, I'm going to go ahead and finish putting the card together. I've got a side fold card base here. I'm going to put some adhesive down right on the card base, pop my background in place, and then I'm going to take a little glossy accents and add detail to the heart, the labels on the coffee cups, and then the two iced coffee cups with the lids. I want to add glossy accents to those as well. Since they are kind of plastic and see-through, I think this adds a lot to the design. And the lid actually goes over the edge of the cup. That's why I did that little lip a lighter color. I wanted it to look more like it was translucent, like you're seeing through it to the color of the cup underneath. I'm going to set this aside to completely dry, probably about an hour or so. And this coffee-themed card is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this coffee card featuring honeybee stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create this card are linked below the video here on YouTube. Please be sure to visit the Honeybee channel for more information on this project. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.